Hello and welcome to The Stinger, a superfan's guide to Marvel, Star Wars, and much more. Joining me on the podcast today, they do believe in ghost stories. It is Trent, Neely, and Joseph Snead. How are we doing, guys?
Yo ho, a podcast life for me.
Yes. Well done, Trent.
I'm really bad eggs.
Okay, having literally just rewatched that scene, I don't understand. What was that?
So it's from the ride. Like, it's the song that plays in the Pirates of the Caribbean
But
ride.
does he actually say that in the song in the ride?
Really
yeah,
bad. I think so.
Like, really bad eggs.
Oh my gosh.
I actually have not
great
written.
touch. Great touch.
Let's see. I'll look up the lyrics of the song.
Mom and Dad, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I know my parents are big Disney adults, and they would be disappointed that I didn't remember that. That part just like jumps out so abruptly to me. I don't know. The really bad eggs really just I can't. I like that lyric was ingrained in my mind from like an early point.
Well,
in
it's also
childhood.
because it's how he ends the movie, where he like hums the tune and then he's like really bad eggs, and then it's drink up in the arties yo ho, and then that's the end of the movie.
Roll credits.
Roll credits.
This is what the verse is. We're rascals and scoundrels. We're villains and knaves. Drink up me hearties, yo ho. We're devils and black sheep. We're really bad eggs.
Ah, there
so he's
it
like,
is.
We're bad eggs. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes way more
like
sense.
I cooked some really bad eggs.
I thought that as a kid too. That it was it was about cooking
That's
eggs.
what I thought too. That's what
I guess pirates don't care about cleanliness, so food poisoning is an issue. Like, sure,
you're right.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean they like their eggs really runny.
What is salmonella to a pirate? You know, I just. Well, if you endured the beginning 2 minutes of this podcast having no idea what's happening, thank you for sticking around. Today on The Stinger, we are here to debate whether a very classic film that was made 20 years ago, Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, deserves to be in the Stinger Hall of Fame. So thank you all for joining us for this rich discussion. As always, you can follow us on social media at The Stinger Pod on Instagram and on TikTok. You can subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast, and then follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Find us at The Stinger Pod wherever you watch, wherever you listen. Guys, good to see your shining faces today.
Great to see you, Josh.
I can't wait to talk about this movie. Thank you so much.
Wow, lifting each other up, starting out positive before the debate begins.
Positive, exactly. Like last week, we were at each other's necks, talking about Justin Hammer a lot.
More justice for Justin. That's all I'm saying.
And now we get to just revel in the glory of a early 2000s film that honestly probably the Pirates movies probably shaped our childhoods more than we realize.
Yeah. I was thinking about that earlier today, where it's like this movie means so much more to probably our generation than like anybody older than us or younger than us. Where it's like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, right? Like that keeps going for the next generation.
Right.
Whereas I feel like Gray is going to be like Uncle T, why are you like mom and dad so obsessed with this Pirates trilogy? And we'll be like, because they're the best things ever, Gray. Like that's why.
Do you
and
think?
There's only 3 movies, all right? Just
yeah,
3.
There's only 3. You can ignore 2 of them.
We can't do that. You can't. It's remains part of it. And I stand by the 5th movie. Pretty good.
It's fun. I have a lot of fun with the 5th one.
5th movie's pretty good.
5th movie's fine.
It is weird how this lives in almost like a little time capsule of basically just the first decade of the 2000s. And my experience with this movie is the Pirates movies, I've seen them all, but this one I have seen a lot. I think I've seen each of the other Pirates movies only a handful of times, and for most of them just one time. But the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, it was one of those movies that got put on the DVD player a lot growing up, you know, like on road trips. If we had a little DVD player in the car, you know, pop this bad boy in and have a great time on the road trip. I don't know, like there are scenes for this movie ingrained in my mind. How about you guys?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Where I watched it a bunch when I was a kid and had it on DVD, and then like the DVD sort of stuff went by the wayside. And then Disney Plus happens, and like Emily and Matt are like, it's really credit to them that I like went back to this when Disney Plus launched and became like properly obsessed with the trilogy because they love this movie. I might have to have them
Really?
on for a separate episode just for their takes on.
Oh my! I need to hear them talk about this.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
Like they love this movie. And so yeah, like when Disney Plus launched, we watched it a bunch. Like when COVID happened, we watched it a bunch. And probably the three of us will run through the entire like the first three movies like once or twice a year. Now.
Wow.
So yeah, pretty big deal. Pirates in the Emily Mad Trent canon.
I did not realize that. That's huge.
I loved all three of the movies. I think we probably watched Dead Man's Chest more than the others. I think that was kind of our favorite one. But yeah, I mean, these were just like great, fun adventure movies. They were kind of coming out about the same time as the prequels, but went past the prequels some. So you had that more later 2000s type of adventure swashbuckling movie. And like everybody wanted to be a pirate afterwards. Your boy had a Pirates of the Caribbean birthday party for like age 10, I think.
Oh,
we were at
sweet.
The bowling alley. We had like Pirates of the Caribbean plates. I was getting like Jack Sparrow action figures. So, I was a big fan.
Of course. Oh, that's sick. I did not know about the Pirates themed birthday party.
Yeah, I think I was.
We'll have to find some pictures of it because we've got pictures of it. I just don't remember where.
Of course you do.
I think I pulled a Pirates of the Caribbean Halloween outfit. Like I think I may have done Jack Sparrow one time as a kid.
We went to Disney World as a family like 3 times, and one of the times I think I was like 4th grade, I want to say, and there's a picture of me and my brother and my dad with I think it was either me or Jake or both of us that had the Mickey Mouse ears with the Jack Sparrow bandana on it.
Yeah.
I've got those ears.
You got those too? What do you know, man?
Yeah.
Look at that. I have no idea if they still exist in the Gann household, but that's an iconic picture.
What would you do if I just happened to have them with me?
Oh, no, you don't.
No, he does not.
No,
does he have the
No,
ears?
you don't. No, wait, what?
They're at my parents' house.
We'll drive and get them. No, I'm just kidding.
They're at my parents' house with my R2-D2 Mickey ears.
Ooh,
nice.
That's a nice little collection you got there. It's a nice little collection. Yeah,
we were definitely a Disney household.
Same. I mean, and that's the funny thing is I know it's a Disney ride, but like when someone says, "What's your favorite Disney movie?" I don't know. Pirates of the Caribbean like doesn't immediately stand out as a Disney movie because of the animation.
Right.
Yep.
Disney live action kind of gets slept on sometimes. There are some absolute bangers in here, and Pirates of the Caribbean is at the top of the list to me.
Well, especially when you think of the live action fiction, because a lot of the live actions are like the true stories, like Remember the Titans and Miracle and all that.
Right.
I do think, rightly though, some of the Disney live action gets crapped on, justified.
yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a debate for another day. But this is absolutely a gem. Trent, as we kind of get our way into this conversation, would you mind telling us a little bit about who made this movie, some of the main figures and the cast and behind the scenes?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have this directed by Gore Verbinski, who besides doing the other two in this trilogy did the animated film Rango, which is a lot of fun. Written by Ted Elliott, Terry Rossio, and Stuart Beatty, and Jay Wolpert. Music by Klaus Badelt, and the main theme, of course, by the GOAT, Hans Zimmer.
What a guy.
Cinematography by Darius Wolski.
GOAT's a little strong, but that's a debate for another time.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. Costume designer Penny Rose.
John Williams exists. So.
That's true. John Williams does exist. Production design Brian Morris. For our cast, we have Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow, Keira Knightley as Elizabeth Swann, Orlando Bloom as Will Turner, Jeffrey Rush as Captain Barbossa, Kevin McNally as Joshua Gibbs, Jack Davenport as Norrington, Jonathan Pryce as Governor Swan, among others, and then some of the acclaim for this movie. So it had a worldwide gross of over $600 million, 80% critic score with an 86% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. It is number 228 on IMDb's top 250 films as listed by audience votes. Had 5 Oscar nominations. So Johnny Depp, Best Makeup, Sound Mixing, Sound Editing, and Visual Effects. So that's some accolades and general notes there.
That's actually very impressive. More than I would have guessed.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for the rundown, Trent.
Yeah,
I'm interested who won Best Makeup and Visual Effects that year.
We would have been in Lord of the Rings time? Question mark?
Yeah, 2003 is when this movie came out. So is that Return of the King?
No, Return of the King's 07?
04. No, Return of the King's 04. This is Two Towers.
04. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, because this movie did not win for any of these awards. Is that correct?
Just nominated for all those categories.
This was about the time The Matrix was coming out too, wasn't it? The
sequels,
the second and third ones.
Yeah, because the first one's 99.
Because it beat out Phantom Menace on visuals.
Yeah, I just feel like this movie. I'm looking at the things that got nominated for. The fact that Best Makeup and I mean, to be honest, guys, visual effects. I really feel like this movie probably deserved more acclaim than it got. I'm curious, like, obviously we were very young when this movie came out, but I wish I could, like, I feel like I need to ask someone who is older than us, but like, what was the vibe and reception of this movie? Because I would imagine that a movie that is based off of a theme park attraction probably not getting a ton of like hype as like this movie's going to be awesome. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, clearly because of the box office, like people went to see this. It wasn't just kids. And so you know what? I think it honestly is just like after Indiana Jones and Back to the Future, like what was the big adventure franchise for American cinema? Like I think it's this. Not because I'm not saying like that it's the best one. I'm just saying I don't know if any other movie franchise was really filling that gap at the time. I mean, it's wild to think that when
National
this movie came out, we're in the middle of the prequel trilogy, Lord of the Rings, The Matrix, and the Star Wars prequels. Like,
and we get Harry Potter at this point.
Harry Potter's in the mix, and the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans are going at this time. So it's but I think the fact that this was such a unique kind of movie, being like a pirate movie and all that stuff, and sort of harkening back to like classic Hollywood adventure movies. Is maybe what pushed it over the edge. Sorry, Joseph.
I think the closest thing in tone would be another Jerry Bruckheimer film with National Treasure.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Great point. Yeah, so that's a classic adventure.
It did lose makeup to Return of the King.
I thought.
Well, I mean, basically everything lost to Return of the King.
Yeah, I mean, because Return of the King won like 11 Oscars in total, including Best Picture, by the way, which is wild.
Yeah, but what I'm seeing in here is Return of the King and Master and Commander are like ruling everything.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. I don't know. There's a debate. Another movie on old ships. You know what I mean? I don't know. Yeah.
Master and Commander is great. But
it's great, but
but is it more rewatchable than Pirates?
Than the Pirates of the Caribbean? I don't think so. I don't know. So, what do you guys think of the Rotten Tomato scores here?
They seem like, looking back, a little low. Like,
right? I had the same thought,
especially the critics one. Like 86,
the critic rating,
86 is good, but like a flat 80, I'm like, come on, people, this is like an 87 or 9. Like if Rotten Tomatoes is just 50 or higher, and I'm like, who's putting this below a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes? Like, who's like, this is a poor movie?
I agree with you. I don't think I understand 80% critic rating. Like, because I think you could make the argument that it's a good, not great movie, but I feel like 80% is low.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree.
I feel like 80 to 85 is fair, because this is that like early 2000s type of thing when people are figuring out what good movies are in the 21st century. Still, I think. Plus, you're coming off of like a year where, well, you're coming off of 3 years of the Lord of the Rings movies, which people say are like, oh, these are some of the best movies ever made. And so I think it may have been a comparison thing with like, well, this isn't as good as any of the Lord of the Rings movies, but it's still a pretty good movie.
So that's an interesting point. So we talked about the fact that it's in that same era as Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Sam Raimi Spider-Man, and the prequels, Star Wars prequels movies.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fandom podcast. So why are we talking about Pirates of the Caribbean? What makes this a fandom franchise to y'all?
I mean, I think for me, it's just like it was a trilogy that sort of came out of nowhere, right? Like I remember I was listening to a podcast by Craig Mazin, who created the Last of Us TV show,
Yep.
and he was talking about, because they were talking about superhero fatigue and stuff, and he was saying, it's funny that people say like the superhero genre is going to die, because like technically no genre in history of cinema has died. Like even the Western, like yes, Western movies aren't big anymore, but like if you look at TV with like Yellowstone and stuff, like that, everything comes back around. And he said the only thing that has not truly ever come back is the pirate movie was dead, and then Disney brought it back in the 2000s, and it made a ton of money.
Yeah.
Then you would think because it made a ton of money, studios would copy, and we'd be getting a bunch of pirate movies, and it never happened. Like somehow the Hollywood marketplace is like, this was lightning in a bottle for this cast and crew, and like it can't be reliably replicated, so we're just gonna let them have this marketplace. And then like the pirate movies disappeared, right? Like you don't see anything. I guess the closest thing now is the One Piece live action remake on Netflix is like kind of Pirates of the Caribbean ish, but even that's different because it's an anime influenced thing. So yeah, I think the fact that it's just like the reason it's developed such a following for people our age is it's such a unique like unicorn in franchise filmmaking, and it was a trilogy when like trilogies weren't a thing, especially for something not based on like a book like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And I think too, you look at, obviously this is a movie that can go like for, boys and girls can like, but what does every boy like? Swords.
for young
sell a lot of toy swords, that's for sure.
There's like swords and cannons, and everybody likes pirate ships. So like, when I was a kid and these movies were coming out, I was like, oh, let's go play in the backyard with our swords. And we'll be like Captain Jack Sparrow. And I think it kind of touches that imagination part too, which is why it sticks with us who were kids at the time more, because for us, it was like our adventure movie, and it was different than like Star Wars and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, where those have like action adventure in them, but they're like different type of stories. This one was like, all right, guys, we're going on an adventure, and let's go here, and then let's go here, and then let's go here, and all the while you're having sword fights, and there's like, I think the aspect too of like, we got to find the treasure is a big part of it. Like, we got to go get the treasure with a twist on it, because the treasure's cursed and they're trying to put the treasure back. But I think it touches that part of your imagination where you're like, I want to go do this in the backyard.
Right. And also going to like the cursed treasure point, it was sort of a kid friendly scary movie, I think you could argue in a way. Like it was like it had like an unsettling factor, especially when it's first revealed that they're like these cursed pirate skeleton things. It's like, hey, this is something that's kind of like more mature and scary, but like it's still okay to watch it because it has the Disney label on it. In fact, I feel like for a lot of people our age, I remember hearing from people like this is the first PG-13 movie they saw was Black Pearl.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
probably. Yeah, it might have been for me. I was thinking that rewatching this, being like, there's some like disturbing elements to this movie. If you really
always
think
forget about the
it.
section when they're like destroying like Port Royal and like the little kids just lying on the ground crying, and I'm like, that is brutal.
Yeah, it's kind of terrifying. Yeah,
there's a scene too where they're trying to use Elizabeth's blood on the treasure. They're like, we'll just cut her throat and spill all her blood and be done with it. And I'm like,
right? Oh. It's like, whoa.
Yeah,
okay.
These are pirates.
These are legit pirates.
So let's get into the real magic of this movie. All right. What, for each of us, we'll all say something like, to you, what is the biggest strength of this movie?
For me, it's 100% watching it now as I get older. The characters, I mean, obviously Jack Sparrow, like as a character, took on a life of its own because of this movie, and in a lot of ways became like sort of a secondary or third level mascot behind like Mickey Mouse. In a lot of ways, I think you could argue.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, but I think all the characters in this are so well defined. And if you ask Matt, this is why I got to bring him on the pod. The mistake that the fourth and the fifth movies made is that they forced Jack, who's the comedic relief, to be the protagonist, whereas the first three movies are squarely about Will and Elizabeth. And you understand so clearly within the first 10 minutes of this movie what Will and Elizabeth's whole like aspirations and conflicts are. Like she's literally being smothered by like the forced conformity of female roles in this time period with the whole corset thing. And I love how they endear Will to us, like where he snaps the candlestick off like her house, like when he's just waiting for the governor to come down, and he like puts it in the umbrella stand. Also, shout out to Orlando Bloom for being in this and Lord of the Rings at this time. Like, dude was just owning the blockbuster scene. But yeah, so yeah, and Barbossa, I've grown to really appreciate Barbossa more and more I rewatch this. Yeah, the characters are just so well thought out, and every character has like a line of dialogue or a moment in this that's very like etched in my memory now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think since Trent took the characters, I will say the tone of the movie. Because we were talking about like there's disturbing scenes, but it never gets like grimdark. And even like some of the disturbing scenes almost have like a humorous tone to them, where like the skeletons are like swabbing the decks and singing a song on the Black Pearl. And you're like, this is supposed to be weird, and it is. But you also have, you've got Jack Sparrow antics going on. You've got kind of the scenes that are more like you blow air through your nose type of laugh, but like where Will is pretending to be a pirate when they're taking the ship, and he's like, avast ye, and Jack is like, you need to not do that because you're awful at it. But I think the tone stays pretty consistent throughout. It's got darkness, but it's still like a lighthearted, fun adventure movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if I could say something different than both of you. I think I want to say the humor. Honestly, this movie is like was coming back to, it was surprisingly so funny to me. Like
it's so good.
There's so many good comedic moments, and I feel like that really speaks to the 2 points you guys already made. Like when we talk about the characters, I mean, I feel like it deserves camping out on this for a little bit, but Jack Sparrow is truly one of the most iconic characters in movies of the century. I feel like, right?
I feel like you can easily make that argument.
There's just something so charming about him. He's almost like an anti-hero before anti-heroes became a big deal in Hollywood, like they are currently with like a Deadpool or someone like that. I mean, because you don't like, his motivations are clear. You're rooting for him, but he's not a good guy. You know what I mean? And so I think that makes it all the more like true to the genre it is, that it's a pirate movie. You're gonna root for him without like signing off on everything he does. So they nailed that.
Well, it's interesting because like the movies always make it clear that Jack's gonna do whatever he thinks suit his interests, but at the same time, he always pulls back a little bit. He stops just sort of like completely screwing over like one of the other protagonists. Like just when you think he's really gonna sell out Will, he actually decides to fight Barbossa in this and stuff like that.
He's almost like a little. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
He's almost a little Han Solo-ish.
Yes, I think he belongs in that lineage of like the level, that like that scamp, that scoundrel.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good comparison for sure.
And I think one of his strengths is just like the charisma that pops off the screen when he comes by. And I think Matt's right about it not working as much when he's the main character. But as a side character, he may be more compelling than Will and Elizabeth, even though their story is the crux of the first movie and really the trilogy as a whole.
Well, what's great about especially the first movie to that point, I think, is that like at different points in the movies, like Will and Elizabeth are like, "Oh, you have to do this because of honor, or it's the right thing," and like he like schools them about like how naive they are, and it's this weird thing where like the movie doesn't condone what he's doing, but like that they present that he is at least being more honest about like how human nature actually works.
Yes. Yes.
This is definitely, I think, of all 5 of the movies, I think this is the best portrayal of Jack, where he's kind of weird and out there, but he's not straight up a cartoon. He's like he's like a quirky pirate, but he's not just there to be the quirky pirate.
Right.
Which I think is part of the main, is probably the major problem with the 4th one, where he's just there kind of like yelling and doing his funny run, and whereas this one, it's more believable.
Sorry. And I'll borrow from Matt again. Like his other problem with the later ones is that they sort of lean into the slapstick. Like Jack is lucky to like get out of this ridiculous circumstance to hijinks, and Matt's always made the point that it's like Jack's very good at improvisation, but he's not, and he can be a little bit like he can come up with wild ideas, but he's not like stupid. And I think this movie does a good job of showing that, where it's like the rowboat over them, and Williams is like, this is either madness or brilliance, like, and he's like, it's amazing that those two things can coincide.
I'm so glad you brought that specific scene up. I was trying to figure out a way in my brain to bring it up, so thank you, Trent. Guys, I have to talk about this. I am no physics major, but how for you listening at home, like that we're talking about the scene in the movie where Jack and Will are escaping prison. They take a rowboat off the beach, hide under it, and then you see them walking on the bottom of the ocean floor, and then it cuts to them under a rowboat, and there's air. Like there's a gap of air between them and the top of the rowboat, but they're at the ocean floor. How does that make sense? Like in the physics of our world?
Oh, it doesn't. Jack's such a good pirate, it defies physics.
So, as the resident nerdy engineer person, that's actually real.
How can you do that?
It's a thing to do with, I don't know fully how it works, but it basically has to do with like the pressure and the suction of it. Because I think when they filmed that scene, they like were actually doing that.
Really?
Yeah, so I don't know exactly how it works, but you can actually do that. That's real.
All right, Lord of the Lore in both in both on text and in the real world. I just couldn't fathom. I couldn't fathom them like holding this little rowboat to keep their little air pocket.
I think they do have to hold it down, or it'll like float up. Like the water pressure will do something. So, but yeah, they're like actually down there underwater doing that. You can actually do that. It's possible.
All right, I'm gonna need to do a little research endeavor after this podcast episode. In fact, if you're listening now and you can actually explain it over text, please comment somewhere on one of our social media posts, because I need to know. DM us, like I need to know. I am legitimately so confused by that. But hey, it can happen.
It's a properties of water and air type of thing. It's like it's weird how it works, but you can do it.
I'm gonna chalk it up right now to Jack Sparrow magic, but
that works too.
It is physics how it works and properties of water.
You're right. You're right, but I don't understand still. It's just me being a communications major.
I don't understand how a lot of things work, but
it's the world we live in, Josh. Get over it. That's what I hear.
Josh, why does this big old metal bus fly?
It's a great point. Someone explain it to me. All right. We've talked about a lot of the biggest strengths of the movie. Do y'all have any weaknesses with this movie?
I'm gonna be honest. I kind of don't. I kind of think this movie's perfect, and I don't mean that in the way of like that it's like The Godfather or Citizen Kane, but I mean like as a
stand on it, Trent.
As a adventure movie, I'm like is there anything incorrect about this? Like I totally buy the medallion as the plot engine and the MacGuffin. Like all the characters, I understand their objectives. If you're gonna make me pick something to keep the conversation lively and going here, I as much as I love the scene for some of the comedic beats, like the Elizabeth Jack stranded on the island thing, I think does make the pacing. It doesn't hurt it, but it wobbles the pacing a little bit for me.
It is a little abrupt.
I'm looking up a quote from Quentin Tarantino that kind of relates. It's not necessarily about Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's about movies.
Okay.
And essentially what he says, it was on Jimmy Kimmel. And what he's talking about movies that he says are perfect. And he lists like, what are the movies he lists? Jaws, The Exorcist, Back to the Future, Young Frankenstein. And what he talks about is, here it is. When you say perfect movies, you're talking about any individual. You're not talking about any individual person's aesthetic, but even trying to account for all aesthetics. Perfect movies kind of cross all aesthetics to one degree or another. It might not be your cup of tea, but there's nothing you can say to bring it down.
Oh,
so I think he might not agree with it, but and I'm not going to dare challenge Quentin Tarantino on movies, but I kind of agree with
Joseph.
Trent, where it's like, I don't really think there's much you can look at in this movie and be like, yeah, I would have done this a different way. Because you look at it and you're like, I think the story, while straightforward and simple, is good for what it needs to be. I think the performances are good. I mean, Elizabeth can be a little bland sometimes, but I think that might be her more trying to fit into that culture of the day. And then she kind of grows into it in the second and third movies also, of becoming the pirate king in the third one. But if you look at it, there's nothing you would actually change about the movie. You just sit down and like, oh, I'm just going to sit down, have a great time with this, and then move on. Because it's pretty well paced. I mean, it's not like, I know we talked a little before the podcast about Jack and Elizabeth hang out on an island for 20 minutes, but you do get some important information about Jack.
Yep.
And like the legend he's built up about himself that turns out to just all be a lie. You know, he's lashed all the sea turtles together and was in touch with the animals of the ocean. And he was like, nah, I was here for like 3 days, and then a shipping boat passed by and picked me up.
I love it. I mean, I don't disagree with y'all. I don't disagree with the great Quentin Tarantino. This movie does a lot of great things, and it feels like one of those movies where it's not trying to blow you away with this extravagant plot and these massive stakes like a lot of blockbusters do nowadays. It's very simple. Here's a pirate trying to get back on top, and there's a romance that is fueling the narrative of this movie. Will Turner is learning about his family history. There's like a secret about him, about like, ooh, where is he really from? His dad was a pirate. Elizabeth is like a really great just hero in this movie, I think, especially like early 2000s, to see a woman be one of the main heroes in the movie. Pretty great, a little ahead of its time, you know? And I just think this movie, it's doing everything that it's trying to do excellently, and it keeps it really simple. I think it is easier to make a perfect / close to perfect movie with the kind of plot stakes that this movie operates in.
Mm-hmm. I genuinely love that we came up with like actual flaws to say about The Dark Knight on like our Hall of Fame pod, and then for this we're like, nah, this movie's pretty perfect. Like we just lost some credibility with like a certain portion of nerd fandom right now. Like
no, but I don't think
you said Pirates of the Caribbean is better than The Dark Knight. You idiots! We're never watching this again.
Honestly, yeah, that was what the reaction would be with some people.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna be real, guys. I think we're right.
I think we are.
But I think it goes back to what I was saying. Is The Dark Knight is trying to like say something about the society we live in and the frailty of human existence. The Pirates of the Caribbean is just trying to have a good time. You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot easier to make a perfect movie when that's your goal.
Yeah, and you know, if you said like which movie do you like more, Dark Knight or Pirates of the Caribbean? I'm like, oh, you know, it's probably The Dark Knight, but The Dark Knight can bring you down sometimes. Like, oh dang,
right. What mood am I in?
Like Batman just lost, whereas Pirates of the Caribbean, you're like, haha, they're sword fighting.
Yeah,
exactly.
I was about to thank you. I meant to bring that up earlier too. That there's a bias that needs to be acknowledged where any movie with swords gets like an instant bump in Trent's like rankings.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, like Princess Bride, Pirates of the Caribbean. Like we need more swords in movies.
What is it about swords?
They're just cool. They're just like more elegant, I think, than like a lot of other weapons you can use in movies. Like Mission Impossible, we finally got a sword fight, which like that was like triple things Trent loves. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't even handle this.
And we haven't even talked about the ship in the title. Just like how cool the Black Pearl is.
It's
like
so
this
cool.
The ship is all black and has black sails. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Because like a little kid is going to be like, oh, nobody's going to beat that ship in a fight. And then they come out and say, yeah, the Black Pearl is also the fastest ship ever.
Yeah. Yeah. They do a really good job of building out what a pirate ship looks like and feels like, and it looking cool, despite it being really an ancient form of transportation, right? Like I don't know. They did a really cool job of that. So we're talking about a lot of these things. So we'll get to our next topic. What's the most underrated aspect of this movie to you? Because I feel like we've mentioned a few, like sword fighting.
I mean, I sort of alluded to it earlier, but I think it's Jeffrey Rush as Barbossa.
Yes, thank you, Trent.
Like similar to the Dark Knight pod, where rewatching it, I was like, you know, Gary Oldman's kind of like the actual crucial puzzle piece for this for me. I feel very similarly about Jeffrey Rush, where, ready for a wild comparison, guys?
Please.
Captain Barbossa is the Bill Belichick of pirate movies, where like on the surface he seems like a grumpy dude who doesn't want to do anything and just wants to go about his business, but also he can't resist teaching people about his chosen profession. And somebody like a random Twitter thread talked about this a couple of years ago, where it's great that the reason in the sequel is Elizabeth and Will come into conflict sometimes is because Will learned how to be a pirate from Jack and Elizabeth learned from Barbossa in this movie, and that they both they teach them different things. Where Will learns that it's all about like scheming and subterfuge, and Barbossa, it's like the etiquette and knowing loopholes and like the legalese of how piracy works.
So does that make Jack Sparrow the Mike McDaniel?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you. I was proud of my metaphor, and then you just elevated it. But yes,
that's right. That's how we do it, baby.
He's certainly not the insert Patriots assistant coach that gets a head coaching job somewhere else person.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
What? And Barbossa, he gets the signature line of this movie, guys. Like the line that everybody knows and remembers. That's the biggest thing from the trailer. You know, you best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one. Like what?
It's a bar.
It's the best line in this movie.
Bar. Yeah, he's a great character. I was thinking the same thing, Trent, watching this movie. And then, is it the third movie that he comes back in?
Yeah,
he comes back. He's awesome. Like he's in like the literally last minute of the second movie.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. But he's awesome in the third movie too.
Yeah, like, where they're like, "Hey, marry us on this ship in this rainstorm," and he's like, "I'm a little busy at the moment."
Yes,
but sure.
You want to talk about the comedy of these movies? The wedding scene in the third movie where he's marrying them while he's killing people is hilarious. But
Joseph, how about you? What's underrated to you?
I think I gotta stick with. I don't know how to not go back to
Yeah,
he's great.
Sweet Barbossa. Let's go.
Because he's like such a a scene stealing, like dialogue chewing villain.
Yes.
But then you also see his sheer desperation to be freed of this curse. He's like, I'm going to kill everybody to get this coin, and I'll spill all of Elizabeth Turner's blood. And oh, wait, no, I'll spill all of Will Turner's blood. And kind of his backstory with Jack, where he's like older than Jack, but also did the mutiny. He's just such a great, fun villain where you're like, okay, buddy, you're wrong, but I kind of like you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would say for me, I'm actually going to go visual effects here.
Nice.
I really and look, it got an Oscar nomination for visual effects. So I got to be honest, like it was way better than I remembered. It was way better than I expected it to be. I actually remember being pretty freaked out by the skeletons in this movie as a child because I don't know, there's something so real about them. I don't know, the way that they're not like skeletons like you would see and think of like Nightmare Before Christmas, you know what I mean, where it's like very kind of like hokey, goofy, silly renderings of like what skeletons look like. They look like actual corpses that have rotted.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's what's freaky. In fact, I know as a kid, the monkey skeleton, Barbossa's monkey, when it turned into a skeleton, freaking terrified me.
Yep.
That monstrosity absolutely destroyed me. Like, it was so terrifying watching that skeleton monkey as a child. All right, yeah, so guys, we have discussed a lot about this already. This is my favorite part every time we do our little Hall of Fame recaps. And so now we get to enter into our best scenes draft. We have a lot of good candidates in this movie. Like we were talking before, and I didn't
100%.
rewatch the entire movie, but I was able to kind of speed watch it on Disney Plus and catch a lot of the most important scenes. There's a lot of good ones in this movie. So our draft order for this quick section is Joseph, then me, and then Trent. We're going to each pick two of our favorite scenes. We'll do snake order. Joseph, you have the first pick. Take us away, my man. All right. Yeah. So, guys, we have discussed a lot about this already. This is my favorite part every time we do our little Hall of Fame recaps. And so now we get to enter into our best scenes draft. We have a lot of good candidates in this movie. Like we were talking before, and I didn't rewatch the entire movie, but I was able to kind of speed watch it on Disney Plus and catch a lot of the most important scenes. There's a lot of good ones in this movie. So our draft order for this quick section is Joseph, then me, and then Trent. We're gonna each pick two of our favorite scenes. We'll do snake order. Joseph, you have the first pick. Take us away, my man.
All right. Since I know it won't be there when I get back around, and it kind of highlights the humor, but also the character of Jack Sparrow, I will take Jack Sparrow's entrance scene when he's on his little crow's nest and then jumps down into the bottom of his little dinghy.
Oh, man.
And the ship is like sinking when he gets to the dock. I will take Jack Sparrow's entrance.
It's so good, right?
Dang it, man. Oh, that's so good. Gosh, that's a good one, man. I wanted to pick that. That was my first pick. It's one of the best introductions for a character. Yeah, I just feel like, Trent, you mentioned this earlier, but Jack Sparrow, you know his motivations early on in this film. I actually think you know exactly what he wants from the very first moment when he enters in the scene that Joseph was talking about. It's iconic. I love it so much. Him riding in as the ship is sinking is just so iconic in my mind.
It's so great.
Because
he's literally riding a sinking ship, but he never loses his sense of like, I'm the best pirate who's ever lived. Like, it's not just that he's ignorant to what's happening. It's that he's like, no, I'm going to project awesomeness and in controlness, like the entire way through this.
It's perfect. It's actually perfect for him. And then his interaction with the two guards of the Royal Navy when he's on the dock
Outstanding.
is just priceless. It's so freaking good. I go next. I have the next pick, and Joseph sniped my pick. Okay, so with my first pick, I am taking actually the final act of this movie when Will slices his hand, gets the blood on the medallion, drops it in the chest, and Jack Sparrow just moments before shoots Barbossa, and Barbossa's like, "What are you doing, you idiot?" And then turns around and sees that Will has done the deed, and he has wiped the medallion in his blood's hand, dropped it in the bucket, and then all of a sudden you see the feeling come back to Barbossa, and it's great acting. It's just so good. And then I love the line when he just goes, "I feel old."
Yeah.
It's just so it's so good. It's so good because he's like this whole movie he's fighting to feel something again, and then he realizes once he feels alive, he realizes like, "Oh wow, I'm old. I'm kind of washed right now." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then all of a sudden dead. It's so great. It's such a great
No,
moment. It honestly gave me a little like Rey and Kylo in the throne room,
Ooh.
like a little bit of that vibe where it's like a little team effort and taking out the villain. I don't know. I liked
Nice.
it.
I like
I
that.
liked
I
it.
like that. For my first pick, I got to go with the other scene that I think really shows the characters who they are through action. I'm going with Will and Jack's fight in the blacksmith shop.
Oh yes.
I think this is a perfect fight scene in terms of cool choreography, but also revealing the character, because it's the whole thing where Jack is spending the whole fight trying to leave the fight, right? Like he's
Yes.
trying to get to the door, and then Will, throws the sword at the door, and then Jack's like, okay, great, but do you actually know what your footwork is? And then all that stuff, and tests Will that way. And I love that even though Jack is like joking around, like it shows that he's a competent swordsman. And then you have the great thing where it moves to the rafters, and then the music is in time with the sword blades like hitting each other. And then Jack escalates it all by cheating in the final fight by using, the environment and then a pistol. I mean, everything about it is just pitch perfect action storytelling, in my opinion, genuinely.
It's a great scene. I rewatching that, I was like, man, it is like the first 30 minutes of this movie is like magic,
It
honestly.
really
It is
is.
just like great scene after great scene. All right, Trent, you get to go back to back. What you got
Uh,
next?
Yeah, so for my second pick, I think I gotta go with, um, you know what? I think it has to be the scene where Will stops Jack's execution. It's just so good. Where
Oh man, it's
Because
so
I know we were talking
good.
about how like streamlined the story is, and that's definitely true. But I think what's great is it is about Will learning this truth of you can be a pirate or a criminal and still be a good man at like a core moral center. And then the fact that he realizes like, yeah, Jack's a pirate, but he still saved Elizabeth and the Royal Navy by stopping the pirate curse, and so
Yeah.
he doesn't deserve to die in this moment. And yeah, just as a culmination for both Elizabeth and Will to choose their destinies with each other. And it's just a great, very like romantic, old school Hollywood ending. And I really like it.
It's so good. I wanted that was my next pick. I was ready to choose it. I remember that like watching that scene as a kid, even like feeling like really like scared, like oh my god, like again, there are elements of this movie that are very dark. Like they're literally about to proceed with a hanging, and in this like PG-13 but like kid friendly movie. I don't know. It was like really eerie to
It's a
me.
lot.
But then, him bouncing on the sword is just it's so
It's so
iconic. It's
clutch.
so great. So great. Um
So my scene, and Josh, I guess you'll just like edit this in after yours, maybe.
mhm.
So my
Yeah.
scene
Yeah.
is the scene where the undead skeleton guys are walking underneath the ship, and they come out into
Oh,
the moonlight
yeah.
and transform underwater into the skeletons.
It's so
I think
good.
that's just a super
Ah, that's
iconic
so
shot
good.
of the movie.
Yes.
So
It
so just
is. It really
thinking
is.
back on it, you've got like this iconic shot of Jack on top of his thing, which was my first pick, and then this one is just like we were talking about, like the kind of the creepy, scary aspect of the movie, of them
Yeah.
just coming out of the shadows and turning into their undead selves. They like crawl up the sides of the ship
So
and
good.
it's just super creepy, and all the British soldiers are like, what the heck is going on?
It's so good. And like every time one of these pirates slips in and out of the moonlight and they go from like human being to skeleton is so good. And it's so creepy and eerie. I
And
love
it's
it.
so seamless too.
It really is.
Right. That's the thing that's so impressive. Yeah. All right. So for my final pick, I am actually going to go with the scene, which is Will and Jack teaming up to steal the interceptor. I
Yes, I love this
love
scene. I'm
this
actually glad you
scene.
brought it up.
I love this scene so much because it's like it's the first time that him and Will work together, and you get to really see just how different these two characters are. And it's so funny because Jack is just this like free spirit and anything goes, the ultimate improviser, and Jack is like so noble and so like, I'm gonna go save this girl. Like it's funny why, like watching them interact. Like they're under the bridge about to walk underwater in the scene that we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
and Jack is like sussing Will out a little bit, like, what would you like, how far would you go for this girl? And Will's like, I would die for her. And he's like, okay, all right, cool, sounds
Yeah.
good. Like, all
No,
right.
that's great. And then like there's a great moment when like I think Gillette is the character's name, is like trying to fly down Norrington through the telescope.
Yes.
And you just see on through the telescope, you don't hear any of the dialogue, but you see like Jack trying to teach Will how to do something with a sail, and he's just like moving his arms like this, trying to get him to like let it
Yes.
out. And it's just also that Gillette character is like my favorite dude. Just like he has a couple iconic lines in this movie where it's like, "Stir of the rocks, it's a miracle she missed them." And then when like
Oh, yes.
when the interceptor's about to run over the rowboat, he's like, "Abandoned ship." He's just like the king of projecting from the diaphragm. Gillette.
So dramatic in every moment that he's in. And then just the way in which they steal the ship will never not make me laugh. Like
it's so good.
This entire Royal Navy just leaves their ship, like leaves the door unlocked and is like, please go steal our ship. It's totally fine. We don't care about it. It's like, it's almost like something out of a cartoon. But it fits in this movie. So I love it. It's so funny. That's my final pick. I absolutely love that scene. It's so funny. As we wrap up, Joseph had to leave us early, had some technical difficulties, but Trent and I are still here.
We're still here.
And we're going to decide whether this movie deserves to be inducted into the Stinger Hall of Fame. Joseph has given us our vote. We'll reveal that in a moment. But Trent, let's talk about this movie's legacy.
Yeah.
As we did with The Dark Knight, we kind of just talked about what movies were made before The Dark Knight that, you know, allowed it to be made and vice versa. So like with the Curse of the Black Pearl here, it is a early 2000s blockbuster, which would make you think like, as popular as this movie was, as much money as it made, like obviously this had to go on to be like a pretty influential film in movies. But was it actually? I feel like it's up for debate.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I was talking about earlier, where it's like, as Craig Mazin said, like theoretically, because it made so much money, this should have inspired a wave of pirate movies by different studios, and it didn't. So in that regard, you could say no. But I think if you look at this as one of the movies, along with Jurassic Park and Lord of the Rings, of being like these leaps ahead in visual effects, especially when you get to Dead Man's Chest and Davy Jones and those things, I think this movie is actually pretty significant. In fact, there's a YouTube channel called Just Right that's all about screenplay structure and things, that, and the head guy for that channel did a video on the Pirates trilogy like a month ago, and he actually said, sort of to the good and bad, that people in the visual effects industry say that World's End, the third one of these, was like a pivotal moment in like the overworking of visual effects artists, where they were trying to finish up that complex whirlpool, you know, fight with like Davy Jones and all those people who have fish skin and stuff like that. And like they finished the visual effects for that. And so it sort of taught the studios, this one person argued, that like they could just make these outlandish, like, oh, you can make a whole sequence in like a month and a half, right? Like you did it for Pirates. So whether that's a good or bad thing,
right. It's like not the most ideal.
That's up for debate. And again,
influence.
that's just the story that I heard reported on this one YouTube channel. I'm not saying that as
Sure.
fact. I'm not indicting anybody in anything, just to be abundantly clear on the record here. But that is something that I've heard of as a legacy for this trilogy.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. And I think I wouldn't have thought that visual effects would be the lasting impact. You know what I mean? Like, this movie is...
But when you think about it, pre-Avatar, like, Davy Jones made, like, along with Gollum, might be the apex of CG characters before you get into the Avatar stuff, right?
Yeah, you might be right. Because, I mean, that's before any of the MCU CGI that we get. And
right.
I can't think of much else pre-2010 that is, like, really setting a standard. Because even, like, I was thinking about this. I mean, look, the prequels, George Lucas is often heralded for just how much he pushed the boundaries with visual effects in the prequel trilogy. Which
100% he did.
100% he did. Because, like, Phantom Menace comes out in 99, and the technology is just rapidly improving, like, year to year as we go throughout. But I don't... And this is more so about, like, when the movies were made. But I don't know if anything in the prequel trilogy touches, like, Davy Jones, for example.
Right. When I think Davy Jones, it falls into that specific category of, like, photoreal CGI, where it's like the first CGI that you buy that's a real person, whereas the prequel CGI, in their defense, is like George wanted to create these foreign feeling alien species and planets. So yes, the CGI doesn't look photoreal because it's not meant to be a real person, whereas Davy Jones was meant to once be a person.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think that would be the distinction there for Star Wars, but I agree with you 100%. That's
a really good point, though. I'm curious what your thoughts are about, like, how does this movie rank with its predecessors, right? So, like, the Indiana Jones Back to the Future adventure, I mean, I guess you could kind of say Jurassic Park, like those adventure movies of the decade before or decades before that kind of allow pirates to exist.
Yeah, I mean, it's I emotionally, I don't think I could put this over, like, Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I will say that you could make the argument. Matt actually and I talked about this, like, last week in preparation for the pod. That he sort of makes the argument that Will and Elizabeth and Jack are arguably, like, they're more complex than Indiana Jones or Marty McFly as characters, right? Like, we know way more about Jack, Will, and Elizabeth than we ever learn about Marty McFly or Indiana even. In that regard, I think you could argue this movie actually is a stronger adventure movie, but I don't know. I mean, it's a weird thing though, where I don't know without the beautiful simplicity of Indiana Jones if, like, pirates even exist. Like, I do think the Pirates owes its lineage to the films of Indiana Jones and and Jurassic Park and stuff. So I think it's the chicken and egg thing.
It is, but I still don't. It's tough for me to think Pirates of the Caribbean, those movies, like, did something. They did things better than, like, Indiana Jones, for example.
Right.
But as a whole piece of work, I don't know I could say that.
Right.
Because it's weird. I mean, I think this proves the point that we were talking about earlier, that these movies kind of live in their own time capsule.
They really do.
They're way far more advanced in terms of visual effects than their predecessors. A little bit in story, like we're saying, but it didn't impact the industry like other movies that we will talk about in this Hall of Fame series. So it's really interesting.
No, I mean, the only other movie that sort of came along to try to replicate it, we talked about this a little before we were recording, was, like, Jungle Cruise, which I did have fun with.
Yeah, that's right.
That's like the only other movie that's based on a Disney ride that is meant to be a, like, fun adventure romp. And from a story perspective, it's not as focused. I don't think the character work's not as nuanced, and the action and visual effects are not even near Pirates, I don't think, just on a visual clarity level, even though it is, almost 20 years younger.
It's interesting. I'm glad you brought up Jungle Cruise. I never saw it. I'll say that first. But it makes me think, like, it's weird that Disney, it's just the way that, life panned out, right? but it's weird that Pirates didn't spawn a bunch of new adventure properties within Disney. Instead, Disney buys Marvel Studios,
and that becomes their adventure franchise.
Exactly. Yeah. But imagine, in another world, they could have never bought Marvel Studios or Star Wars and said, "Nah, we're actually gonna focus on we have a hit right here." Like I feel like most other studios would be like, "Let's replicate the hit that we already have."
Right. I feel like in this alternate reality, like there would be a movie based on Expedition Everest or something. Like
right. And it's like whether it's about the parks or not, like they would find ways to like continue to create new stories and new lore.
Yeah.
Like that, like a Pixar did. You know what I mean? You know, something like that. 'Cause that's the history of Disney. It's weird that it's weird to think that didn't happen actually when you put it in that perspective. So
yeah, 100%. This is
strange.
A lightning in a bottle franchise, and I think again that sort of has led to its mystique and charm. Right? Is that like I don't know, like superhero movies are gonna eventually maybe fall out of fashion a little bit, but I think they'll come back in some way, shape, or form. Like I don't know if we're ever gonna see a pirate movie franchise like this. This again.
I don't know if we will either. It's because it's not like there are other pirate properties just laying out there. I mean, it would really take someone being passionate about it to say like, yeah, I'm gonna make a pirate movie.
Although I say that, and I think there was at one time Margot Robbie was gonna do a reboot version of this or something with
of
this
Pirates
IP.
of the Caribbean.
Yeah, and then the strike happened. So I don't know where that stands, but
like as an actor or a director,
I think as a producer and as a star of
something.
And obviously, I mean, she's been great in a lot of stuff, and Barbie was the event of the year this year. Right. So we'll see.
Well, that's fascinating. Okay, I'm very intrigued by that. Okay, well, hold your horses, folks. If we get a Margot Robbie Pirates of the Caribbean, I will genuinely be ecstatic. That would be.
I'll be there because she's great.
Be there opening night.
This franchise is fun. Like I could totally see her pulling off the swashbuckling thing, like a little bit of Harley Quinn in there.
Yeah.
I think it works.
That would be awesome. Okay, Trent. So this brings us to the ultimate question. Does Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, deserve to be inducted into our Hall of Fame? Joseph has voted yes. What say you, Trent?
100%. I mean, I feel like we sort of tipped our hats early here when we were like, is there any weaknesses in this movie? No. And so exactly. It'd be hilarious if we said like there's no objective flaw, but also it doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Enough. But no, I really think, again, we just said can't say for sure if it's better or worse, but I think the fact that this movie's in the same conversation as movies like Jurassic Park or Indiana Jones, like that statement alone says a lot about the lasting power of this movie. And I think just one of the most rewatchable movies ever too. Like that adjective will always count a lot for me, where it's like I've seen lots of movies that are better than others in my time, but there's very few that I've like watched at what feels like an infinite amount over my lifetime, and this is truly one of them. So,
and that you can turn it on again and not feel bored and not feel tired of it. That's the magic of this movie. I will be honest that I haven't really dove into the lore of Pirates of the Caribbean, and I've seen all the movies, but I've never really desired to go back and rewatch 2, 3, 4, and 5. But the first one I will literally always rewatch. It is there is something just so pure and magical about it. And I think to one of the things I'm trying to say in this episode is like this really is like live action Disney that works and that lives on and is super rewatchable and may not have had an impact on the industry necessarily, but absolutely I think has an impact on the brand of Disney. And I'm not like, pro the corporation of Disney, but there is something about growing up with parents who love Disney and love taking us to the parks and like love the magic of the world of Disney through all of its stories. We're not talking about the multi-billion-dollar organization, right? But like the stories and the worlds that you can go and escape to and live in. And Pirates of the Caribbean is probably one of the last examples of originality within Disney that you can point to, because they bought Marvel and they bought Star Wars. That's not Disney. That's just their money. And so it's one of those things where, gosh, I wish we had more. I wish we had more stuff like this to get excited about, right? Like new, fresh stories. Because if you take Marvel and Star Wars out of the picture, you basically have a bunch of live action remakes and reboots of former things like National Treasure on Disney Plus, or, I know Joseph loves it, but the Santa Claus show, you know what I mean? Like it's repeats. It's nothing new. It's nothing new. And so this is like really one of the last times Disney did it. So yeah, it's a yes for me. It's a yes for me. It couldn't be a no. So we gotta find a movie to say no to on here at some point.
Yeah, that's true. We got now. I'm gonna make a mission to find one that I'm just so I can make you all rewatch something too. Like all of us rewatch it.
Exactly. Yeah. Build it up like you can't wait to say yes, and then come crashing down with a no at the very end.
Yeah, 100%.
I love this movie. I encourage all of you to go back and rewatch it if you haven't already, because it's truly a wonderful time. Trent, I think that's gonna do it.
I think so. I think I got all the big thoughts on this masterpiece out there. So
it is a masterpiece. Thank you for saying it. Y'all, we will be back soon. I can just say, like, the year is winding down to a close, and you don't want to miss Stinger content. We've got a lot of fun stuff coming at the end of the year. So please subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us at The Stinger Pod on Instagram and TikTok. And we can't wait to talk to you soon.